Usually I have everything with me, but this time I thought in a bus, don't take everything. But then you get lazy and you forget this one thing, which is in that big suitcase, which you don't have with you because it's just a bus.
Oh, I know how that feels. Touring, there's so many things that
yeah.
You have a smaller show, so you bring less stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I forgot the most important element.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, my name is Aric Improta, and I play in Fever 333 and Night Verses, and I'm currently in Frankfurt, Germany with Fever 333 opening for Bring Me the Horizon.
What I love about drumming is the incredible range from very primitive to super complex. You have just this, and you have Terry Bozzio.
Right.
This is the range we have. I love to be philosophical about it and think and talk about it, and then on the other hand, just beat the shit out of the drum heads.
Absolutely.
So it's emotion, it releases tension, and you can overthink it, and it even can be sports. So this is what I love about drumming. But what is your essence of drumming?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm very happy that you highlighted the primitive aspect of drumming, because I do think that most people that I've talked to when they first get into drumming, it's because of that aspect. You know, I've tried other instruments. I've tried guitar, and with drums, if you hit a drum, it sounds like a drum. You know, with a guitar, you hit a chord, and you're first learning how it's not that fun to hit bad notes. So I think that primitive aspect is what initially got me in, and I try my best to never lose sight of that. I just feel like that keeps it from ever feeling like a job. I mean, there are technical aspects to the music I play in both Fever and Night Verses, but if I didn't have that, you know, primitive side to just let loose and feel free, I don't know that it would be something I'd dedicate my life to. That being said, I do think that the specific side of drumming is not necessarily why I'm doing this. I love drums. Again, I got into it for that reason. I feel like it's very physical, and I've always been into physical activities, whether it be skateboarding, diving, gymnastics. I did all of this stuff growing up, and I think that drumming has been a very physical outlet. But in general, I think creating is the interest point for me. That comes with music, so that's why even though I drum, I also do my best to incorporate as much pad, like the roll-in pads and stuff like that, just to have a melodic element as well, because I think with rhythm, it's very, very more focused on a physical reaction from your listener. You know, if you hear a drum beat or any sort of pulse, a lot of audiences' natural reaction is to move to that, whether it's moshing or just bobbing their head or tapping their foot. But I think what a lot of drumming is missing is the emotional response, which comes with melody. So I do my best to incorporate both. And again, more just to have freedom and creativity than anything else. I think drums are just the medium that I was drawn to initially because of that physical side of it. I mean, I've been playing in bands since I was 12. I started touring in 2012. So I think I would count that, because that's also when I got to the finals in the Guitar Center Drum Off, and I remember getting to the top 5 was probably the first time where I felt like, okay, this is something that I'm now at a point where I can really start to take myself serious, I guess. I mean, I always took the passionate side of it serious, but I didn't really know where that measured in the rest of the world, and getting to that place that year kind of gave me a heads up that I was doing something worth pursuing.
You mentioned the word job. Is it already your job, or are you still making it your job?
Oh, I mean, it's my job. I had a point in 2015 where I just thought, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to do anything else, because any extra time that's not going towards this is keeping me from getting better at what I want to do. So the only thing I do for any source of income, other than illustrating, just because it's something I love to do, is music. So yeah.
Through the years, your feeling about music, the why and the how to do things might have changed, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what is the journey? How did you evolve with electronic sounds and those breakbeats you're doing?
I think initially, like most people I know, when you're young, you just see people that you admire and want to emulate. So you do your best to learn what they do and find ways to apply it. The obstacle I guess I always ran into is I would get very bored learning other people's ideas. The only album I ever learned start to finish was Deloused in the Comatorium from Mars Volta. And so it was hard because I'd play with a lot of musicians growing up, but they always wanted to learn other people's songs, and it was just kind of painful for me. I just always wanted to make something new. Sometimes it was detrimental because I just didn't develop enough skill, so I would just be making bad music for a very long time. But I was so stubborn about finding my own way to do things. And I think as time went on, I started to realize that all of my favorite artists were the ones that found their own sound pretty early on and delved further and further into that direction. So then my goal came to just be seeing how far I could go into a world that I didn't know already existed. So one of the things I guess I integrated to do that was melody and using the pads a lot. And I'm not saying that other drummers haven't done that. It's just for me and the environment that I grew up in, it just wasn't as common. And I'm sure the drum off helped with that because you have to perform by yourself and you have to make a solo that sounds complete without any help. So that kind of got me to a position where I was working that way. But then, so yeah, I think for me, another part that had changed was the physical aspect, just in the sense that I was very envious as a kid watching bands like At the Drive-In flail around stage, and I felt kind of confined to a seat as a drummer. And then I kind of just realized, wait, if nobody's really jumping out of their seat or doing any of these extra physical expressions, then I should be the one to figure it out. So I started to pull from other influences like skateboarding and surfing, and even growing up doing gymnastics and watching a lot of breakdancing as a kid. And so yeah, I integrated the physical aspect, and then I think as I got older, I also just learned that the more of your personality you can put into your playing and your craft, the better. And so kind of the last thing I was interested in was illustration, and that's when I started to work with Remo and do the heads.
What have you noticed about your body over the years? Your feet and your hands.
Yeah.
They change. I mean,
absolutely.
the muscles. So it's very interesting for me how this feels for other people.
Yeah, they definitely change. I wish I appreciated it more when I was 20 and I didn't have the pain that I have now. But you just have to find a way to work around it. And I think a lot of times the most creative ideas come from limitation. So there are times when my left hand is hurting and I need to figure out a way to write something that relies on it less and less. And all of those things are pretty cyclical, but again, I try and take advantage of it and use it as an excuse to find something new that I wouldn't normally come up with or try and execute.
Now, that's what the murderous one. Gathered my people for fun. That's what they got. Left in the hands of the sun. Forward to my melody. We never run. Never to cattle that you. That is the cattle that you. That's what we're trying. We'll show you how to act true. That way to blow. That way to go. There you go, baby.
From my own experiences with musicianship, I know that the creative process can be disturbed by misunderstandings if you're in a band, not if you're on your own, but
Right.
working with people. We have ego, stupidity, narrow-mindedness. How do you convince a fellow musician that he or she is wrong and how do you accept that you are the one who was wrong?
That's an interesting question. I feel like I try and determine my position from a creative standpoint pretty early on in a project. So with my band Night Verses, we all grew up together. We've been playing together since we were 12, and we all know what we like collectively, even though we have different influences. So if there's a part that one of us thinks could be better, there's not really a lot of arguing anymore. It's just very like, all right, let's get it there, and then we do. But there's also no ego involved in that. So if, let's say, the part started with a really interesting drum idea, but then the guitar part following was better, then we focus on that. I'm not there to argue, I just want the best music. So it's more just about pushing each other. With The Fever, it's about the song, it's about the message per song. So it's, for the most part, trying to enhance the effectiveness of that song, but at the same time get a good balance. So we'll go back after and say, okay, cool, now that the song is laid out, like where can we embellish some of these musical ideas? So I think I just go to each project trying to figure out in the beginning where I want to be more assertive in those ideas and where I'm there to help. And sometimes, honestly, it's more effective to go with someone else's vision, because I think as a musician, you don't always understand what's best for that project until you've gone on a little bit and kind of figured it out. So again, with Fever, it's more about helping something happen. With Night Verses, I think we're all pretty evenly split in our control over the direction. And those are honestly the only two projects that I write in, so that's my experience.
What is your drumming concept for The Fever? What is allowed and what is not allowed, if there are?
Can't take away from the song. We are really good about expanding on parts live. So if there's any, creative ideas that didn't fit within the 3.5 minutes that we're writing in that song, we can usually pull them out live. But it's more about the emotion. A lot of those parts are written on the spot as a response to how we feel from the lyrics and the drums. Whereas with Night Verses, it's a lot more conceptual. It's a lot more about trying to achieve something that we had talked about beforehand musically, and trying to blend influences that wouldn't normally go together.
I've seen this collaborative project on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Why did you do it?
Well, when I was home before I was touring, I was very jealous of all my friends that were touring, and I had this kind of realization that you always need to take advantage of your situation, whatever that situation may be. There's always an advantage there. So when I was home, I was thinking, well, everybody on tour doesn't have the time to practice like I do right now. So that's when I started practicing like 5 hours a day. And then when I was on the road, I had this sudden realization, like, God, now I can't practice the way I used to. So I was like, what are the advantages here? And one of the many being on the road is networking and meeting other inspirational, phenomenal musicians. So I thought, okay, what can I do with these new contacts? And so I decided to come up with a project that would not only integrate all these people, but find a way to highlight their creative minds. Because a lot of those people, for as great as they are, they're not necessarily in projects that do justice to their full musical personalities. So with those collaborative projects, I usually encourage them to give their direct interpretation of whatever the assignment is in that video, so that they really get to display who they are. And then I'll have the guys in Night Verses, Nick and Riley, add music afterwards, again, to kind of give them a chance to express themselves in a way that most bands probably wouldn't allow.
I feel what I do helps people understand, at least that's my goal, and understand more about music. about instrument art, thinking ultimately about the person I talk to, and I feel that there's more to learn about music and drumming that is just your own experience. So, how do you think? What do you think about different ways of learning?
You know, I do this thing that has helped me a lot in the last few years, where I watch other participants of mediums outside of drumming for influence. And the way that I kind of dictate how I want to apply it is I'll just start my day watching 20 minutes of a skate video or basketball highlights or breakdancing at Red Bull BC1, and I'll wait until I get a physical response. So I'm not just sitting there going, when's it gonna happen? I'm just watching casually, but if something happens that really blows me away, I usually have this motion or something where I'm just like, oh my God. And then I take note of that and I go back and I watch it and I try and find a way to apply that into my music, whether it's how Russell Westbrook is dunking a basketball or how Tony Trujillo's transitioning out of a skate park. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like if it affected me through a video screen, then I should be able to apply that to drums in some way. So I think being able to pull from outside influences is huge, because music has become so derivative because we have all these other drummers giving lessons constantly, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very effective way to learn. But ultimately, if all you're pulling from is the same 20 websites or drum teachers, then everybody's going to start sounding way too similar. And the other thing that I think is very important, and I learned this from Ross Robinson working with him on A Night Versus record, was that a lot of creativity is born from limitation. So I also think it's key to, at certain times, say, these are all the things I'm not going to do here. Whether it's as simple as saying, I'm not going to use double bass on this song, so I have to come up with new solutions, or literally saying, I'm going to write this entire song without cymbals. Those types of questions that you have to ask yourself if you want to try are going to lead you to things that you wouldn't normally come up with. And sometimes it doesn't result in something good. Sometimes it's really fucking hard. But when it works out, it takes you to a new place and gives you one more thing in your Rolodex to remember you can write effectively without relying on all these things that people normally rely on. This is Aric Improta. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and please stay tuned for more drum footage on my channel and on this channel as well.